Hello everyone. So my presentation is on Dostoevsky and his ideas on consciousness in relation to masochism. My thesis is that consciousness inherently makes humanity as a whole masochistic. While he never really uses the word masochistic or masochism or really talks about the idea of masochism, there are a lot of ways in which he implies the idea of masochism in Notes from the Underground. So there is a quote here, and it reads, "Does not man perhaps love something besides well-being? Perhaps he is just as fond of suffering. Perhaps suffering is just as great a benefit to him as well-being." And here we understand through this quote that Dostoevsky sees masochism as something that isn't inherently bad. Like maybe there is a upside to the feelings of masochism in correlation to consciousness. Another quotation that I picked out that I really feel amplifies the feelings of masochism in this writing. "It was not only that I could not become spiteful, I did not know how to become anything, neither spiteful nor kind, neither a rascal nor an honest man, neither a hero nor an insect. Now I am living my life in my corner, taunting myself with the spiteful and useless consolation that an intelligent man cannot become anything seriously. It is only the fool who becomes anything." So here we understand again the ways in which he feels that he has to live like this kind of life. When I was doing my reading of Notes from the Underground, I saw the correlation between Dostoevsky's ideas and Sartre's ideas. Sartre's ideas in correlation to bad faith specifically applies to Dostoevsky's ideas in general because Sartre's ideas kind of work to negate Dostoevsky's ideas. In a lot of ways, I felt that Dostoevsky was a man who was living in bad faith. His masochism, his masochist ways were alluding to him living under the idea that he had to live that way, or that that was the only way he could live. Because in his eyes, he is conscious, therefore he must feel this way about his life. There's another quotation I found very interesting. "Why, suffering is the whole origin of consciousness. Though I did lay it down at the beginning that consciousness is the greatest misfortune for men, yet I know men prizes it and would not give it up for any satisfaction. Consciousness, for instance, is infinitely superior to twice 2 makes 4. Once you have mathematical certainty, there is nothing left to do or to understand. There would be nothing left to bottle up for your 5 senses and plunge into contemplation. While if you stick to consciousness, even though the same result is attained, you can at least fog yourself at times, and that will, at any rate, liven you up. Reactionary as it is, corporal punishment is better than nothing." So with that last line, corporal punishment is better than nothing, we truly can understand that he means he'd rather feel consciousness, he'd rather be conscious than spend his life being unaware. He'd rather feel physical pain than feel no pain at all, than feel no feelings at all. So that's how we understand his idea of consciousness and masochism, more specifically in correlation to Sartre's ideas of bad faith. He would rather be feeling negative emotions, negative feelings, painful, negative feelings in general, than absolutely nothing at all. It could be argued that this is living in bad faith entirely, because if he isn't living his life the way that he like would really enjoy it, then is he really living his life the way someone is meant to live their lives? But the interesting thing about Dostoevsky is that he seems to kind of find enjoyment in this masochism. I mean, he finds enjoyment in suffering, which is inherently the definition of masochism. He enjoys feeling bad sometimes. He enjoys feeling pain. He would rather that pain, suffering, despair, anguish than absolutely no feeling. Here I have another quotation, and it reads, "But upon my word, I sometimes have had moments when, if I had happened to be slapped in the face, I should, perhaps, have been positively glad of it. I say in earnest that I should probably have been able to discover, even in that a particular sense of enjoyment, the enjoyment, of course, of despair. But in despair, there are the most intense enjoyments, especially when one is very acutely conscious of the hopelessness of one's position." So he revels in it a bit. He revels in the disparity of um, suffering. He tends to enjoy it. So could we really argue then that he's living in bad faith if he's enjoying this? Because when I first read Notes from the Underground, I thought he seems to definitely be someone who's living in bad faith. He seems to be Sartre's like prime example of somebody who is not living their life in a way that works to get rid of the anguish and to get rid of the despair, but more so in a way that heightens that feeling. And so it instantly made me feel that he must be living in bad faith. However, because he claims he enjoys the feeling of suffering, it seems like he's not living in bad faith. Okay, is humanity masochistic? I often ask myself whether we are, as a whole, a bit masochistic. There are many people who enjoy to cry to sad songs, to cry to sad movies, and they purposely put themselves through that, knowing it's going to be sad, knowing it's going to be unenjoyable, but somehow they find joy through the pain. So, do we enjoy feeling sad? Are there pros to the feeling of despair or anguish? In many ways, it could be argued that there are pros to the feeling of despair or anguish. Sartre, for example, argued that these feelings, though they are not good to dwell in, they can perhaps help us feel the need to recognize there's not something aligning with our belief system, with the way we really truly want to live our lives. And so it can lead us to a better outcome, a better way of viewing our situation, and a way in which to change our perspective. So essentially, Sartre, in a way, claims that living in bad faith could be masochistic, or at least that's how I interpreted Sartre's ideas in correlation to Dostoevsky's. Being masochistic, staying at a job that you don't want to work, staying at a job you don't want to work, doing things you don't inherently want to do due to the beliefs other people have put upon you, due to their perception of you. So, and that way, Sartre's idea of bad faith is in correlation to the idea of masochism. So to conclude, I do believe that Dostoevsky's ideas on masochism tend to be true. Uncomfortable feelings of anguish are important to self-discovery. Consciousness is not necessarily a terrible thing. It is scary. However, consciousness, while it does allow someone to be masochist, it's not inherently bad to be masochist. Masochism could be useful